no psychologist, but I'm guessing the human subconscious is one messed up place to find yourself in, and that's the premise and major failing of DeadEnd Cerebral Vortex. A first-person maze game which finds you floating through your subconscious, trying to recapture fragments of your soul in order to escape back to reality. DeadEnd certainly hits you with a decent head-scratching challenge though. As you move through the mazes, corridors suddenly become dead ends and dead ends become corridors right in front of your very eyes. This means that there is a fair amount of thought required in order to work out where you've gone and how you could get back to that elusive part of your soul that's now suddenly gone behind a brick wall. With no map, no compass, and no real easy way of navigating, I actually resorted at one point to sketching out one of the levels just to try and work out a route that I hadn't yet exploited. Teleportation modules and reality inverters, and these switch around blocked and unblocked routes and vice versa, all help to add an extra layer of complexity to an otherwise simple game. On the whole, DeadEnd Cerebral Vortex is a game that requires a certain amount of thought and provides exactly the kind of challenge you would expect from a maze-based puzzle game. It is a deeply frustrating challenge that forces you to kick in your logical thinking synapses into gear. Thankfully, the developers have allowed for a 70% completion threshold before allowing you to progress to the next chapter, which is great. So if you are completely stuck finding the last part of your soul on a level, then there is a good chance you'll still be able to move on to the next challenge and revisit it at a later date. It's just as well the gameplay is quite involving, however, because the controls are a real low point. You basically move on a grid system, and you can only move one space at a time by clicking on the mouse button. This does stretch out the gameplay length, and it helps to retain the atmosphere that DeadEnd tries to inject into each of the levels, but it's an incredibly clunky way to move your character and quite tiring on the left mouse button. Keyboard users and those who prefer to invert the look up down controls will be disappointed to learn that no such options exist. Quite why this movement system was implemented I'm not quite sure, but when you're having to consistently retrace your steps through the maze levels, it certainly works against your enjoyment of the game. Graphically, the game looks incredibly tired and dated. It lacks crisp high-resolution textures, and the levels are constructed mostly through a cut and paste of the same handful of textures. The soul is represented by cubes that are oddly sci-fi in appearance. They really wouldn't look out of place in Portal. Thankfully, there is enough variety in each level that you never get too tired of the same maze unless you have to spend a significant amount of time in there trying to progress through to the next chapter. Atmosphere is also another one of my biggest gripes with DeadEnd, and it's more down to a missed opportunity than anything else. The setting the game places you in, your subconscious, is perfectly ripe for some wild and imaginative interpretation, yet the levels are sparse on detail, terror, horror, humanity and narrative. Early on the game takes place in both a morgue and an insane asylum, yet those settings are never expanded upon or explained. When you consider how well a similar narrative was delivered in other games such as Dear Esther, DeadEnd falls very short of delivering a compelling storyline that rewards your playthrough. As such, once you become bored with the premise and the gameplay, there is no galvanising reason to continue onwards. DeadEnd Cerebral Vortex has some promising elements of gameplay thanks to its challenging alteration of the maze levels as you move through them, and this is a strong example of the genre, but the lackluster graphics, musical score and the absence of a narrative makes progress tiring and lacking in any real reward, so we're giving it a 5 out of 10. Anyway, this is Adam from Fiends, and I'll see you all next time.